We spoke last week about kind of like the history behind what was going on leading up to the story of Purim. Today, I figured you all know the basic story, I think. So we will kind of go a little into different things. So the first question I think we should discuss is who was worse, Achashverosh or Haman, the King Achashverosh or Haman? So we'll give a little background. Mordechai, the Jew, right, refused to bow to Haman or do anything else that wasn't allowed, according to Judaism. So even like at the time that they had the party where all the Jews were invited, so all the very religious Jews, they didn't want to get in trouble. So they all just happened to be out of town during the week of the party. So, right, like you say, like, oh, you're supposed to go to a wedding. Oh, I'm on vacation. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm supposed to be out of town this week. I wish I could come, but I can't come. So that's what most of the like very religious Jews did. So they wouldn't be in trouble for like not attending the party, but they weren't in town, sorry, not their fault. But Mordechai was the only one that was in town, so to speak, and he didn't leave, but he was told, I'm not supposed to go to this party, which is against Judaism. We're not going. And Mordechai was, I want to, not in a bad way, but in your face Jewish. He didn't care to show his Judaism, to be proud of his Judaism. And he didn't care to say, hey, I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not going to do this. And most people, the Jews were coming from, they had been, they were exiled from, Israel. In Israel, they were all Jewish and they all, were used to being only amongst other Jews. And here they're amongst other nations. And it's like, how do you act and how do you behave? Do you try to blend in? Do you try to stick out? And Mordechai was very of the opinion that you be a Jew and you don't try to just blend in and like try to hide your Judaism. And that's why the Megillah calls it says Ish Yehudi Haya B'Shushan. There was a Jewish man in Shushan because he was the only religious Jew that stayed in Shushan, the capital city, while the party was going on. And he was not afraid to stay and not listen to the king because he knew the real king was God, was Hashem. What's interesting is to note, I remember hearing this years ago at a Shabbos tale. There was a woman talking and she was saying, she found this book all about how Jews should try to blend in and assimilate and not try to stick out. And then she looked at the copyright of the book and it was written in Germany in like 1931 or 1932. And see how much that helped, see? So anyway, Mordechai, he was the only one that wouldn't kneel for Haman. So Haman had a special pass or special allowance that because he was so close to the king, he was like second to the king, that anyone who walked, anyone who he met had to kind of like, bow to show that he was greater and to show how great he was. And they kind of like were subservient to him. Mordechai was the only one that refused to bow down. So there's actually another story into this, and that is years before, both Mordechai and Haman were like generals in the army, and they each had their troops, and they were each given provisions to provide for their troops, for however long this, whatever war or something was going to be. Now, Haman, he was not very careful about, taking care of the provisions in a good way, keeping track and everything. And he used up his provisions very quickly. And he was desperate because the soldiers were hungry. They needed food, but he had no money left or no food left to give them. So he met up with Mordechai and his troops. And he said, please, do you have any food for my troops? Do you have any money I could go buy food? And Mordechai said, I could give you, but how are you going to pay me? And Haman didn't have anything on him or didn't have anything left. So he said, okay, I'll sell myself as your slave. And they wrote on Haman's shoe, like a little note, like, I, Haman, sold myself to Mordechai as a slave, for the, in exchange for the provisions. And so Mordechai didn't have to really bow down to Haman because because of this incident, like anytime Haman met Mordechai, instead of Mordechai bowing down, he would just like kind of show his shoe to remind him, hey, you owe me. So on the outside, this is the reason why Haman wanted to kill the Jewish people is because it says because Mordechai would not bow to him, and it made him very angry, and he got all riled up and started, there's no, why isn't Mordechai bowing down to me? And that's the official reason why he wanted to kill Mordechai. And then he said, hey, why should I just kill Mordechai? I might as well kill all the Jewish people. But obviously we know that the real reason that this idea came to him was not, just from him alone, but was from Hashem, because the Jewish people did partake in Achashverosh's party with not kosher food and not kosher wine, and the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Holy Temple, which were very sacred and shouldn't be used for, common things, and especially not a lewd, not kosher party. So Haman comes to Achashverosh with a plan. Okay, he says, "Hey, I want to buy the privilege to kill the Jews." He brings 10,000 silver talents, whatever, like the money of that time or whatever it was. That's a large amount of money. And he says, there's one nation scattered and dispersed amongst the other nations. Their laws are not like your laws, right? They have their own holidays. They do their own weird things. They keep their Shabbos. They don't obey the king because he's saying, like, they first obey Hashem before they obey Hashem, themselves. And the king, instead of he got the gist of it. He knew exactly who Haman was talking about. Didn't have to say it was the Jews, because Haman didn't actually say, oh, it's the Jews. And he says, sure, I don't need your money. Here's my ring, my signet ring. You go make whatever rules you want to figure out how to kill the Jewish people. So it seems from this that Achashverosh doesn't really care about the Jews either. It doesn't like the Jews. And the Talmud explains that there's a parable. One guy has a field, and in his field he has a big mound of dirt, and he's thinking, oh, if I only could find someone who could take my dirt, I'll even pay someone to take my dirt away. He puts a little ad in the classifieds now. Free dirt. Okay. Then there's another guy who has a hole, a big ditch in his field, and he's saying, oh, I wish I could pay someone to come and fill my ditch. And they both, he also posted on the classifieds, or maybe they posted on one of the free giveaway sites on Facebook or somewhere, or next door. And soon enough, they meet up, and the guy says, oh, here, I'll pay you money to take my dirt. And the guy says, oh, I'll pay you money to bring the dirt. And I said, oh, let's just exchange it for free. Yes, perfect match. And they exchange they get the dirt, and he fills the dirt, and everything's wonderful. So the mound owner is compared to Achashverosh. He has the pile, the Jews, and he needs to dispose of them. And Haman, he's the one with the ditch, with the hole. And because he has this burning desire, this itch in him that, that the Jews get him nervous, and he has to satisfy that itch, satisfy that, craving of taking care of the Jewish people. So Haman wants to buy the Jews from Achashverosh. He wants to fill his hole. And Achashverosh says, please take it. I want to get rid of it. I don't need it either. So why do we use the mound and the ditch as an example? Achashverosh looked at the Jews as he knew they were they were special, they were exalted, they were lofty, they were a great nation, but they still bothered him. So they're like a mound, something high. They were high and exalted. Haman looked at them as a ditch. They're low, they're degrading people. So they had very different perspectives on how they perceived the Jewish people, but the end result was they both wanted to be rid of them. So Haman wanted to purchase them, just like you purchase sheep for slaughter, oh, I'm going to buy something off you. And Achashverosh said, hey, that's not right. They're not so low. They're not that you just buy them for me. Don't just sell them, and because Haman's thinking, I don't know, humiliate them and torture them and kill them. And Achashverosh was more concerned for their honor. So even though he wanted to eliminate them, he wanted to do it in a more, in a cleaner manner. So he preferred Haman take care of it. His hands were clean. He didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't want to have a sale. So he just gave Haman the permission. And because Achashverosh was sensitive, that's why he didn't die like Haman. He didn't lose his throne like Haman did. He did actually die just a few years later. I think 3 years later he died, and his son took over, Esther's son. Okay, so the question is, which is worse? Is the right out anti-Semitism worse, or someone who kind of hides it or pretends to be your friend? Is that worse? So the Talmud explains that there's different facets of anti-Semitism, the different layers. There's the body and there's the soul. Achashverosh, he is like the body of anti-Semitism. He's like the mound. You see it, it's out in the open. He represents the outer layer. There are many non-Jews that look at Jews and like look at them as mysterious or suspicious or strange. Something that's a little bit different about them. It sticks out. It maybe makes them feel uncomfortable. They don't really know what it is. It's a kind of like a growth. It doesn't just they don't, they say, why does Jew just fits in? Why are they so different from us? Okay, it's more subtle, but they don't particularly act on it or do anything about it. Then there is the soul of anti-Semitism, and that is the existence of the Jew. It's like a ditch. It's something. It's a vacuum. It's a space, and a non-Jew just feels a space like that this itch. Whenever they see the Jew, either they look at it and say, "Oh wow, a Jew." We admire them. They're so great. They're so respectful. They're wonderful people. We have affection for the Jews. Or it's the opposite. They take this itch they have about the Jew and they look at the Jew as, they hate them. They repulse of them. And it's coming from jealousy. Or sometimes people have a mixture. They might think of the Jews as, special on one hand. On the other hand, can't stand them or can't handle it. So the soul of Judaism is the vacuum, the space that is created that the person has to fill, and either they fill it with good things, and then it's not, really anti-Semitism, or they fill it with the hate for a Jewish person. So many anti-Semites don't really identify the soul of their hatred. They're just uncomfortable with the Jew, and they don't know why. And that's more like the body. Haman, he was aware. He felt that ditch. He felt like the itch in him created by anti-Semitism. The Megillah says he was filled with rage against the Jews. And why was he so upset with Mordechai? Why was he filled with rage? Because he knew Mordechai was really right. And no matter how much honor Haman would try to put on himself, he would never be able to get rid of that itch that the Jew, the itch that he saw Mordechai. And he just felt, oh my gosh, I'll never, I can never be great. Can never be. This thing is always going to be bothering me. He always felt that Mordechai would have something over him, no matter what. So that is a little bit about the difference between Achashverosh and Haman. In short, Achashverosh was like the body, the outer layer of the anti-Semitism, and Haman was like the soul, the inner, the itchy feeling, the vacuum, that something's missing and that's bothering me, anti-Semitism. We'll just discuss another thing now. Any questions on that before I go on? We'll discuss now Queen Esther.
Can you repeat the body and the soul? Wait, repeat that one more time, what you said.
Achashverosh is the mound. You see it. It's out in the open. So that's like the body of anti-Semitism. It's that you maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable or say something's different about the Jews, but you can't really decipher it.
Right.
And Haman is the ditch because it's a hole. It's underground. So you don't particularly see it if you're out looking out. That's like the soul because it's more hidden, but that's where the essence. There's like a certain vacuum within them that either they say, oh, the Jews are so different and because they're so good, they're so great, they're this, or they look at it and as in an anti-Semitic way as, oh, we can't handle it, we hate them, we have to get rid of them on all accounts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, Queen Esther. So the question always comes up is, how is it possible this nice Jewish girl, Queen Esther, goes to become to marry a non-Jewish king? Okay, so we'll go through a few things about that, a few answers. So one thing we'll say is that Mordechai, who was her who raised her, he saw a divine vision that something would come out of it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The easy way out answer is that it says that Esther was able to create like a ghost, in Hebrew it's called a shade, a shindalet, or like a demon or whatever, of her. So whenever time Achashverosh called for her, she really just sent this like ghost of hers. Okay. And then the face value answer is that, so what happened, right? The king was going looking, was sent out a whole bunch of people looking for eligible, women to come and be, what's it called? To come, to try and be the queen, what's it called? Contestants. And first they just, looked for women, who just wanted to come, or they were kind of looking out for beautiful women. Eventually, since they didn't find anyone that he was satisfied with, they started to become more aggressive, and it started became, if you know of any beautiful woman, please come forward and let us know. We need to find her. And of course, even though maybe during this time Esther was more careful because she knew that they were looking for a beautiful woman, and people knew she was beautiful, she like hid more in the house. But obviously people talked, and it became a threat that if you don't bring someone, that if you know of someone, you don't bring her forward, you'll get killed. And so it was at a point that she had to, she was found, and she didn't go willingly to the king. She was forced to go. And so someone who was forced, right, forced into, someone who's raped, someone who's forced into such a relationship, it's not they're not doing willingly. It's not their fault. So she didn't do anything wrong. Now, there is a Jewish law that says that if you're in a situation of life and death, you don't have to, you can, transgress on a mitzvah in order to save yourself. So for example, like now this past Shabbos, there's a rabbi, actually my Isaac's cousin, his wife is Isaac's first cousin. I posted on Facebook, if any of you are on my Facebook. They were trying to get out of Ukraine. And by the time they were able to find a driver and gas and everything, and she has a 2-week-old baby, besides for her, the rest of her family, and they started to travel, they ended up having to travel on Shabbos to get out of Ukraine, out of the border. But because they're saving their life, they're allowed to do such a thing on Shabbos. But there are 3 mitzvahs that it says that even if someone puts like a knife to your neck, you can't transgress on those mitzvahs. One is worshiping idols, so worshiping another religion. One is murdering somebody else, and the third one is any forbidden sexual relationships, okay, or adultery. So on one hand, say, okay, so she didn't. So isn't this one of the 3 mitzvahs that she should have rather been killed for? Because it's like a forbidden sexual relationship. But because it's like a forced thing, it's a passive thing. She didn't have to do anything for him to do for the king to do what he did. She's just a passive participant in his merrymaking. And so she didn't really do anything wrong. And she didn't sin at this point, because every time he called for her, she didn't go willingly. She had to go. It was no choice. And she did not sin. But now, when the whole decree came about that the Jewish people would be killed, and Mordechai calls for her to go and plead on the behalf of all the Jewish people, right, to go to the king and plead on their behalf to save them. If she goes to the king now, she's going willingly, and she's asking to, spend time with him or to talk to him. So meaning that she, she's being a active participant in this relationship. By doing that, she, I want to say like this, but kind of like sells her soul or kills her soul, because like this, as long as let's say she's trying to do what she has to do things according to the Torah, and mitzvahs as best as she could. By her willingly going to the king now, she is not saying, oh, okay, I'm just being raped, I'm just being forced, but I want to go to him, I want to be with him. And by doing this, she sacrificed her whole future, her future in the world to come, because she had to, sin to save the Jewish people. And this is what she didn't want to do. Why should I go and do something totally against, our whole religion. And then that's where Mordechai convinces her, said, if you don't, who else is going to go? Hashem doesn't, if maybe this is the whole reason why you're here in the palace. And if you don't go, then Hashem will find somebody and you'll be, forgotten by your people. You won't be anything anymore. It's, you're not the messenger that, God wanted to be. And then she says, in Hebrew, it says, okay, fine, I'll go. Kasher avadati. What I'm lost, I already lost. Because she lost her life in this world, meaning she didn't have the life that she wanted to have. She was forced to be in the palace and forced to live a certain way. And she couldn't just live her nice little life out in the Jewish quarter and like a nice Jewish little girl, woman. And now by doing this, by going to the king, she's losing her life in the world to come because, or in her mind at least, I'm sure she didn't in the end because of what she did. We'll discuss it in a minute too. Because she is going willingly to the king. Second. There is actually also one commentary that brings out that if someone's going to save a life, then they could, possibly be transgress on one of these 3 sins. Let's say if you're going to kill someone and save other people, you're allowed to kill someone, right? So the same thing here. She didn't just save one person, but she saved the whole Jewish people. And so even by doing this sin, since she saved the whole world, she wasn't like considered that she transgressed on it. Now, in general, Esther did not. She was coming from a very religious home. She was very pious. She wasn't like a person who was like, oh, I get to be in the palace. I get to enjoy myself. I get to be with the coolest, the biggest, most richest guy in the whole entire world, or anything like that. It's not something that she enjoyed or anything. It was the palace was a place of lewdness. It was a place that was, pop culture or whatever the pop culture was at the time. The atmosphere was so against of what she was used to and how she grew up. She was just a holy woman who grew up in the house of Mordechai, and all these types of things, did not sit well with her in more ways than one. And she just had to live a life, like that. And by going to the king and saving the people, and even though she lost, she didn't have her own life, she saved all the Jewish people for all times. Because this will bring it up. I don't know if we've brought it up before, but just to bring up that this was the only the time in Jewish history that all the Jews in the whole entire world were threatened with annihilation at one time. It was because King Achashverosh ruled over 127 countries, which was about half the world, and it was where all the Jewish people all lived within his countries. And he didn't care if you were religious, not religious, this, that. He just wanted to kill all Jews. The time of Hanukkah, they just wanted to kill the Jews who were practicing Judaism. Times of the Spanish Inquisition, they just it was only the Jews also who only weren't going to convert to Catholicism or were living in Spain. There were Jews living in other countries. Times of, even though a lot of people were killed and a lot of Jewish communities are decimated, or the Holocaust. Yes, many Jews died, but there are still a few, Jews in other countries. But this is the only time in Jewish history that all the Jews' lives were threatened at once. Okay, so now to add a few little interesting tidbits. Haman, he's the one that convinced Achashverosh to kill the first wife Vashti when she wouldn't behave and she wouldn't come to the king, which is a whole story in itself. And so he convinces Achashverosh to kill the queen. In the end, the new queen, Esther, gets Achashverosh to kill Haman. Okay. One of the things that Achashverosh was very fearful was that his astrologers told him that a Jew will take over his throne and take over his palace. That's one of the reasons why he was so eager that the Jews be killed. Little did he know who was the one that was going to take over his throne was his own son, who was actually a Jew. Another interesting thing, which you might know or not know, but if you look in the Megillah, Hashem's name is not mentioned at all in the whole entire Megillah. There's no word Hashem, like any of Hashem's names, in the whole Megillah. There's no reference to God. So why is that? So one thing is that when Esther was writing the Megillah, she wasn't sure if the Supreme Court, the Jewish Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin, would approve of the Megillah as one of the books of the Tanakh. And so she did not write Hashem's name in it. Another thing is that it says that every time the words Hamelech, which means the king, you could reference it as not just the King Achashverosh, which we're talking about in the story, but the real king of the world, which is Hashem. So there's many times where it just says Hamelech, and that could also mean Hashem was really doing something at the moment. And there are two verses in the Megillah that if you take the first letter of the first four words, it spells out Hashem's name of Yud, then Hey, then Vav, and Hey. So it kind of has Hashem is hidden inside the Megillah. And why is all of this? Because the whole story of Purim is like a story that it was just could be like a regular regular soap opera story. Cause and effect. This happened, so that happened, and it's all natural occurrences. But it brings out the idea that there are miracles within nature. That Hashem, every single thing that goes on in the world, it seems like this is happening, and just that's happening. And you can just take it as a natural occurrence, but you can also look for Hashem within all the things that happen in your life, and that is how Hashem. This is how Hashem acts. This is how Hashem works. Usually in the world. Only sometimes that we have like special miracles and open miracles, which is like the story of Hanukkah is more of an open miracle. The menorah stayed lit for 8 days, even though the oil in there was only enough to last for 7 days. So even if we look at the two toys that we play with on Hanukkah and Purim, we see this. On Hanukkah, we play with what toy? Dreidel. We play with the dreidel, right? It's a little stick and then a top, and you spin the top, right? The stick is on the top. A grogger is usually made, I should have one now, but I don't. As a little stick on the bottom, and then like a thing on top, a noisemaker, and you hold the stick on the bottom and you turn it, right? To show that on Hanukkah, the miracle came from above. We saw it in open, and it comes down because the little stick's on top. But on Purim, the miracle came from below. Like it just seemed like a natural thing, and God did what he had to do. One of the things we do to remind us that God is hidden in the story of Purim and the miracles of Hashem is hidden in the story is that we eat hamantashen because they're a closed up pastry, right? The jelly or the filling is inside, closed up. And some people eat kreplach, which is a kind of like a fried dough thing with meat in the inside. And another thing we do is we dress up because we're hiding our true self. We're hiding who we really are. So we're kind of hiding Hashem in the story of Purim. So those are just a few little tidbits about the story and about Megillah itself. If anyone else has anything to add or any questions, I'll be happy to answer questions if I can, to the best of my ability.